The Philadelphia Eagles have agreed to a multi-year extension with head coach Nick Sirianni. There's a new wrinkle in the Brock Purdy contract as he has a no-trade clause, and it's rumored that the 49ers are not done yet extending players. As well, we're going to talk about the Derrick Henry extension on today's First and 30 football show. My name's Dylan Mel. If you love the NFL, be sure to check out the channel and hit that subscribe button. Let's start off with the Nick Sirianni contract extension news. Listen, if there hasn't been an NFL head coach that's had a roller coaster of a media run over the last 4 years, more so than Nick Sirianni, then there hasn't been one. Nick Sirianni has been the most controversial, talked about head coach, roller coaster of emotions guy in the last 4 years as a head coach. Even more than Dan Campbell, I'd say. Because I think Dan Campbell went from the bite your kneecaps to, okay, quickly everybody loves this guy. Sirianni went from the opening, we're going to grow this team like a flower, to all of a sudden 2 years ago, he's in the Super Bowl and everybody's like, this guy is great. To the following year, the team disappoints and they're like, he needs to be fired. To this year, they win the Super Bowl and he's great again. And even with it being he's great again, I still think there's some level of disrespect towards Nick Sirianni. I see these top coaching rankings videos come out and they really make me want to make my own. Where Sirianni is a fringe top 10, not a top 10 head coach in the NFL. And these people are putting guys like John Harbaugh and Dan Campbell above Nick Sirianni. And Harbaugh, and I get it, he's a legend, but this isn't a legacy award. We're in a what have you done for me lately league, and flatly, Nick Sirianni's just been more successful than these guys. Harbaugh maybe gets the pass of being in the AFC, but Nick Sirianni did something this past Super Bowl that John Harbaugh hasn't done recently, and that's beat KC in the playoffs. And the Dan Campbell one's crazy to me because they're both CEO head coaches. Nonetheless, Nick Sirianni, multi-year extension, well-deserved. In Nick Sirianni's run with the Philadelphia Eagles, it's now been 4 years, 4 straight playoff appearances, 100% success rate when it comes to making the playoffs, 2 NFC East titles, 50% rate of winning the division. A division, mind you, that is pretty much up for grabs every single year of my entire lifetime. I think there's been one repeat division winner in my lifetime. Born in 99 for the record. 2 NFC championships. He has a 50% shot of getting to the Super Bowl. And now 1 Super Bowl. 25% shot of winning the Super Bowl. The only head coaches in this generation, millennium, that have had that level of success and win rate in a 4-year span are Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, and Nick Sirianni. And when you talk about Bill Belichick and Andy Reid, the conversation a lot of the times is which one of them is the greatest head coach of all time. So for Nick Sirianni to be mentioned in the same breath of success rate as those guys is a testament to the fact that Nick Sirianni is a winner. And you guys know me. You know it from the quarterback rankings video, the way I talk about Jalen Hurts. You know it from what I'm saying right now about Nick Sirianni. We could talk about the ins and outs, the X's and O's of football. But at the end of the day, there is some level of basicness of you play the damn game to win. And at the end of the day, Nick Sirianni has done that at the second highest level of current NFL head coaches behind Andy Reid. He wins football games. And listen, I'm not here telling you that I have Nick Sirianni as my number 2 head coach in the NFL. I think that honor goes to Sean McVay. I think there is something to be said for, do you call a particular side of the ball? Do you manage a particular side of the ball? And Nick Sirianni has some shortcomings there. He's not a great offensive play caller, but he is a great locker room leader. Yeah, does he get into it with his players from time to time? Big personalities. Does he get a little brash with fans and media? Yeah, that is the attitude he instills in the team. There's a reason that they all pushed for him to be back this year. You got to remember, this is a guy who last offseason, not only had media calling for his job, but it wasn't like it was secure in the Eagles front office. There was a meeting that team had, feet to the fire for Nick Sirianni, that lasted reportedly hours, of this guy essentially fighting for his job. Agreed to, of course, let Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie pick the coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio come in. and the rest is history. This is a guy who's had a circling door of coordinators, still winning at a high level, a Super Bowl champion. And I think when you become a Super Bowl champion, the Philadelphia Eagles are showing you what a good organization does. You pay the people responsible. Saquon, extension. Jurgens, extension. Jalen A.J. Smitty, already paid. Nick Sirianni, multi-year extension. This is an organization that, hey, you treat us right, you win football games, you get rewarded for it, especially when you win the biggest football game. And if we're talking about, the percentage pie of who's most responsible for the Eagles' victory, don't get me wrong, roster/players and Howie Roseman have bigger slices than Nick Sirianni. But if I were to show you the pie, you don't need to zoom in to find Nick Sirianni's name. We're talking 20% maybe? A good chunk of it is at the feet of the leadership of Nick Sirianni. Last season even was a bit of a roller coaster early on for Nick Sirianni. You remember the 2-2 start that the Eagles had going into the Week 5 bye? Where, it was, see, this is what we said. You should have fired Nick Sirianni when you had the opportunity. Hand up. I'd imagine after some of those games, especially the Tampa one, my emotions got to me. I was never a big CEO head coach guy, so I was on board for bringing in an offensive mind who can call the plays to be the head coach of the Eagles. Personally, I wanted them to keep Shane Steichen. That's why Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie make the big bucks, and I'm here on YouTube, I suppose. But at the end of the day, I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong as an Eagles fan, obviously. Nick Sirianni, this is a well-deserved extension. And he's flatly a top 10 head coach in the sport. You can't win at the level he does and tell me he's not. We could debate the semantics of where he is along that line as a CEO head coach. But again, who are the other CEO head coaches right now? Harbaugh, Dan Campbell. He's been winning more than them. Everybody loves Mike Tomlin and Kyle Shanahan. He's been winning more than them. At the end of the day, those guys have had good rosters as well. The Lions had the best roster in the NFC last year for most of the season. They were the 1 seed. If Nick Sirianni had lost that playoff game, what would we have been saying about him? He didn't. He went on to win the Super Bowl, and he gets rewarded for it. But this has been a roller coaster of a journey for Nick Sirianni, and I think this is a well-deserved paycheck headed his way. Let's talk about the 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers, they extended Brock Purdy, and I think I surprised a lot of you guys in terms of how I talked about Brock Purdy and his $53 million a year. Because as many of you know, I haven't been the biggest Brock Purdy supporter fan on my time in the channel. But Brock Purdy comes in as, the 7th highest paid quarterback at the time of his contract, meaning in 2-3 years, he'll probably be down to out of the top 10. And that's about right for me. I feel like on his best day, he could crack the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's really somewhere from that 12 to 16 point. And, the money that he was making on his rookie deal, being the last pick in the draft, San Francisco kind of says, hey, we're not going to hardball you here. We're willing to meet you in the middle and be fair on this deal. You're our guy. Shanahan loves you. We've seen success with you. We'll give you the deal. I thought that was great. The no trade clause is really, really interesting. As Brock Purdy, now the guy who was the last pick of the draft, has generational wealth at $253 million on the contract, but $181 million guaranteed. So no matter what, you are set for life if you're Brock Purdy based off your play. And that's fantastic. Again, I mentioned it in the Brock Purdy reaction video, but this is a kid who, when he was going into college recruitment out of high school, probably thought, man, I could maybe make the NFL, but I really got to take my game to the next level. And then coming out of Iowa State, it was, man, am I going to get drafted? Am I going to get an opportunity on a practice squad? Can I work my way up from third string to maybe back up somewhere? And maybe one day I'll get a crack at being the starter. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll have to, just go out and live the everyday average Joe life, and my dreams of being an NFL quarterback won't exist. And he gets drafted by the 49ers, who had just drafted Trey Lance with the number 3 overall pick, and not only spent the number 3 overall pick on Trey Lance, but gave up a haul to get up there. And Brock Purdy beats him for the job, comes up from being Mr. Irrelevant, and gets the contract. It is a true storybook story. He now has a no trade clause in this deal. So not only generational wealth, but the ability to control his destiny. Not saying that the 49ers are planning on trading him. I don't think that it's in the plans. The deal's really a 3-year deal worth $60 million a year when it comes to the guaranteed money if things really didn't work out. They'd play it out for 3 years and cut ties with him. But Brock would get a say. He'd have to just straight up cut him. Or he could pick where he goes. And I think that that is, again, excellent negotiating on the behalf of Brock Purdy. Generational wealth and the ability to control your future, it would have been a tough contract to say no to. So shout out to Brock Purdy for that. I'm seeing in the rumor mill that the 49ers are as well looking to extend Fred Warner and make him the highest paid annual average linebacker in all of football. And I think it's not an unpopular opinion. I think the debate's realistically been between him and Roquan Smith. I think an all-pro season from Zach Bond kind of put him in the mix of that conversation, but Fred and Roquan have been doing it for so long that those are, in my opinion, the clear top 2 best linebackers in football, and I would take Fred Warner. I think Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football. So for the 49ers to put him at the highest pay rate in the NFL wouldn't surprise me, and I think it'd be very well deserved. What does it mean for the 49ers' future? Well, we take a look at Brock Purdy in that extension. The team has Ayuk under contract. They're paying him a shit ton of money. Coming off the torn ACL, but hey, like, you're coming back. You need to be productive. We got rid of Debo. Like, you're the guy in the receiver room. There's Jawan Jennings, who is the best 3 in football and proved last year to be a good 2. And Ricky Pearsall, who we'll see what Slick Rick could do on the football field. McCaffrey coming back. You drafted Jordan James out of Oregon. You have Garendo. You have Kittle. You know, Trent Williams looks like he's going to be there. The team, I wish, would have spent some draft capital on offensive line, but Kyle Shanahan and that scheme just doesn't seem to believe in the importance of it. So be it. But the offense is set. They brought back Robert Saleh and made him, I believe, the highest paid defensive coordinator in football, as the team, since him and D'Amico Ryans, has just been lost in a revolving door of who's going to be our defensive coordinator. They make the pivot, bring back Saleh. Makes sense. So now we see, through the draft and through some of these moves, Robert Saleh shaping his defense and really putting some emphasis on that front 7. Hey, we have Nick Bosa. Hey, let's make sure we keep Fred Warner. Let's draft Mykel Williams. I don't think that the defense is fixed overnight, but they were willing to let go of Hufanga. I know Charvarius Ward wanted to leave because of a lot of the situations that happened with his kid passing away, and just wanting to get out of the San Francisco area, but they didn't really make a massive move to replace corner either. The secondary seems to be what they'll figure out second, and they are more prioritizing the front 7. And I think that this is a similar model to what the Philadelphia Eagles do on defense. Now, don't get me wrong, the Eagles hit on DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, but I see the vision. Not this year, but next year, I believe if drafting correctly, the 49ers defense can be one of the best in football, with who they're positioning to pay and where they're focusing their assets. And now that they have Saleh as the defensive coordinator. And when you look at the Niners' schedule this year, it is the easiest in football based on last year's win percentages. So we look at the 49ers' total picture. Purdy, extended. Ayuk, making money. McCaffrey, making money. Kittle, extended. You have Jennings. You have Pearsall. The offensive line is what it is. A defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh coming back, prioritizing his front 7, making sure, Warner gets paid, drafting Mykel Williams. The easiness of the schedule. And now the expectation for me, for the 49ers, you better be neck and neck with the Rams in that division or win it. And you better be a double-digit win playoff team. That is the situation the 49ers have put themselves in. And then to close out today's first and 30, I want to talk about Derrick Henry and his extension. A 2-year, $30 million extension, well-deserved. Derrick Henry was a top 3 finalist for Offensive Player of the Year, with Chase and Saquon Barkley ultimately winning it. Derrick Henry and Saquon as a whole, I think that this is more story about, because obviously Saquon got extended earlier this offseason as well. And going into last year, there was really a lot of questions on the value of a running back. Is it worth it to invest in a running back? Could you just get one for a dime a dozen? There's no point in paying one. Save the money for your wide receiver, save the money for your quarterback, your defensive end, etc. I think that the narrative on that, at least in my opinion, has flipped a little. It is super worth the investment on a high level running back. Because we talk about Saquon's extension and Derrick Henry's extension here. The Ravens were just able to extend Derrick Henry for $15 million a year. I don't have it in front of me, but what wide receiver is making $15 million a year? Are we looking at Jacoby Myers level? And this is not shade at Jacoby Myers, but when you stack up where Jacoby Myers is in wide receiver land and where Derrick Henry is in running back land, Jacoby's probably outside of the top 30, maybe somewhere between 30 and 50 feels right, just off the top of my head. Derrick Henry's definitively top 5. And who touches the ball more in a game? A running back. Derrick Henry. Aside from the quarterback, the running back touches the ball the second most. If you can get elite production out of that guy for, what is it? I mean, Jamar Chase is making $40 million a year now, so more than half the cost, or half off the cost. You do that 10 times out of 10. And in fact, the dip in disrespect, I would say, or devaluation to the running back actually has put some of these teams in a great spot who chose to continue to value it, as they have dependability out of that position, elite players out of that position, production, a 2-dimensional offense, which not every team has. You look at Kansas City last year, Kareem Hunt was okay, but that offense was 1-dimensional. The Philadelphia Eagles knew what they had to do in the Super Bowl to beat them. You look at the Eagles on the other side, what did Kansas City do? We're going to stop the run. We're going to stop Saquon. Nobody's been able to stop Saquon. But the 2-dimensional part of that offense made it impossible to slow them down. You can get that when you value the running back, which is why the Eagles paying Saquon, the Ravens paying Derrick Henry, and I think ultimately the Buffalo Bills should pay James Cook for this same reason if you believe he could be that level guy. It's why the Falcons will ultimately pay Bijan Robinson. It's why the Packers did pay Josh Jacobs. I'm not saying go and dish out this kind of money for guys that aren't elite at the running back position, but you get a top 8, top 10 guy, that's who you should be willing to give the money to. Outside of that, sure, dime a dozen, draft one. You know, if you're, say, the Raiders, who wanted a running back, and the Raiders may be a bad example because Gentry is a blue chip prospect. But if you were the Chargers and you wanted a running back in free agency, would you have been better off paying high level for Najee and giving him a monster deal to ensure you had a decent running back, or doing what they did, 1-year deal Najee, let's draft Omarion Hampton? The New England Patriots, who drafted Travion Henderson. The Cleveland Browns, could they have paid Nick Chubb to come back and it would have cost them a decent penny? Or just any free agent running back? Maybe. Quinshon Judkins. That is where, yes, pivot to the rookie. Yes, don't spend the money. Like the Jaguars. Travis Etienne's 5th-year option coming up. They draft Bashaw because Etienne's not elite. But these elite running backs, the money that you can get them on, it's a steal at this point in time. And I think Derrick Henry remaining in this Ravens offense after a fantastic draft I think to run it back for the Ravens and, hey, let's get a good performance out of Lamar in the playoffs is kind of where they're at. So Derrick Henry extension, well deserved. What it means for the running back market, I think running back stock is back up. If you love the NFL, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I appreciate your guys' support. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.